Previously, Taria used the runic tablet she'd found to fly the ore back up the cliff and leave it with the miners. Said miners clearly had thoughts about the blatant illegal magecraft that kept happening in front of them, what with Taria literally flying in the air, but they decided to keep it to themselves since the group had saved their lives. While she was gone, Zaya tried to subtly take a look inside Taria's journal. She completely failed at the subtle part, but she did manage to get a good look. The group set up camp for the night in what had previously been the Orcs' camp. Keelan built an igloo for them to sleep in to help keep out the cold. That night while on watch, Keelan and Taria had a talk. Keelan thought that Zaya was acting a little odd, which led to Taria deciding to keep a close eye on her. The next morning, the group headed off in the direction of a waystone they knew was in the area. The several hours of travel went uneventfully, and the group was able to find the waystone and get a rubbing of it, although it took Keelan a couple of tries to get a proper one. One might say his first attempt was almost a critical failure on his part. They headed back in the direction of Venture's Vale, eventually meeting up with the miners. The group traveled with them from that point on. A few days in, a rime worm attacked the group during breakfast. They were able to easily dispatch it, once again using lots and lots of magic in front of the poor miners. But considering most people who ever saw a rime worm ended up dead, they decided to continue keeping any thoughts and opinions on the blatantly illegal magecraft to themselves. The next few days of travel were uneventful, and the group eventually arrived back in Venture's Vale. At the Wyvern's Claw, they ran into one of the bureaucrats in the mining company, who was thrilled to see his ore. Also as miners, he was also ecstatic to hear that the group had taken care of the orcs, as it opened up a lot of area for new prospecting. The group was mainly relieved that while clearly still more than a little terrified of them, the miners covered for them and didn't bring up any illegal magecraft. The mining company bureaucrat asked the group if they'd found any other ore, and Taria showed off some of the Platinum Street crystals she'd found. The rest of them, minus Taria, could practically see the fantasy equivalent of dollar signs appear in his eyes. After some persuasion from Tornak and Zaya, and a hand put over Taria's mouth, they managed to come to an agreement where the group would get a decent percentage of the profits from anything mined if Taria provided the mining company with the location of the cave she'd found the ore in. The representative from the mining company also gave them a letter to carry with them. If they made it to Port Valor, the mining company ran the city and could definitely give them some more jobs. Once he left, Sean went to provide the Wyvern's Claw with the details of what they'd encountered, heavily edited to avoid any mention of magic. That was enough to raise their rank to the nestling status, which gave them some extra benefits. Keelan headed out to turn in the rubbing that he'd gotten of the waystone. He was given the location of several new ones, as well as the promised gold. One of the waystones that he was told about was underwater, which immediately got his attention, what with him being a sea elf. Tornak went to grab a copy of the day's paper. It was, interesting. That was certainly a word for it. Taria's name was definitely in the paper in relation to the takedown of the local branch of the Raven's Tithe, and it was mentioned that she was in the company of a representative from the Valenta family. There was also mention of the Red Sun cult spreading throughout the Empire, and more details on House Mirkwood being stripped of its titles. Meanwhile, Taria watched Zaya use Mask of Many Faces to change her appearance to go out to eavesdrop and try to get information about what was going on in the city. That led to a confrontation between them that revealed that while Taria was actively trying to find her mother, Zaya was the opposite. She didn't want to find hers. Several harsh words ended up being spoken before Zaya stormed off. Once she was gone, Taria changed her appearance to look like Zaya and wandered around the city for a bit. She eventually came back and tried to impersonate Zaya in front of the group. Both Oz and Sean immediately not only knew it wasn't Zaya, but figured out pretty much instantly who it actually was, as Oz could smell that it was Taria, and Sean was pretty damn insightful, especially when it involved her ex-girlfriend. Poor Tornak was just confused. A conversation took place regarding the article in the Pegasus Post, and Sean made it clear she wasn't thrilled with her family's name being mentioned as being involved with the members of the Raven's Tithe being captured. She was concerned that they might want revenge and go after the easier targets. Around that time, Zaya turned up and wasn't pleased to see herself sitting at the table, especially once she realized just who it actually was. Several people in the tavern noticed the so-called twins and commented on them. Zaya quickly introduced the disguised Taria as her twin sister, Zoe. Eventually, everyone headed to their rooms. Sean used sending to reach out to her older sister again, while Oz went to Zaya's room for a quiet talk, where it quickly became clear that both of them had some concerns about losing the other. The next morning, Keelan and Oz headed downstairs since they were the early risers of the group. As they went to sit at the table, a dashing half-orc man came rushing over to sit with him. He explained that his name was Atraxian Rhodes, and he was a journalist for the Pegasus Post who wanted to travel with them and report on their stories. Cue panic as their minds immediately went to the many, many, many times they'd used illegal Madecraft just in the past 12 hours alone. And that is where we left off.